Welcome to teleSUR English. We now go live to the UN as the 77th General Assembly takes place. Ramtane Lamamra, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad of Algeria, addresses the Assembly.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, it gives me great pleasure to extend to Mr. Saba Kourouchi my warmest congratulations on his assumption of the presidency of the General Assembly at its current session. I wish him every success in his work. I would like also to thank Mr. Abdullah Shahid for his excellent presidency of the 76th session. I would also like to reiterate to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, our full support for his efforts and endeavors aimed at improving the functioning of our organization and strengthening its role in accordance with the 3 pillars of the United Nations Charter, namely security, development, and human rights. Mr. President, this session is held as the world is witnessing increasing tensions that threaten to have serious repercussions on the system of international relations, especially in light of the resurgence of the phenomenon of polarization, as is the case in the Ukraine crisis and its negative repercussions, which would double the existential challenges in vital areas. This situation, with its complexities and dilemmas, which are difficult to see in all their aspects in the present circumstance. This situation highlights more than ever the structural imbalances that characterize global governance mechanisms and the urgent need to address them in an approach that ensures parity and equality among all states and puts an end to the long-standing marginalization of developing states. In that spirit, the profound transformations we are witnessing today, despite the difficulties they entail, these transformations provide us both with opportunities to set the course straight and to work to uphold the principles and objectives on which our organization was founded. Therefore, we fully agree with the theme of the current session and believe that we are truly at a watershed moment in advancing multilateral action in the face of common challenges that prove day after day that our collective security is closely linked to the stability and prosperity of all our peoples without exception. Mr. President, my country is celebrating this year the 60th anniversary of its national independence and is resolutely pursuing the process of building a new Algeria under the leadership of President Abdelmajid Tebboune. In this regard, Algeria affirms its commitment to these values and principles and its determination to make its contribution to the maintenance of international peace and security, and to the achievement of comprehensive, just, and sustainable development. In that spirit, Algeria is preparing to host an important summit for Arab states on the 1st and 2nd of November 2022. We look forward to this event being a decisive moment in our joint Arab work towards a more effective contribution by the Arab group in addressing the current regional and international challenges. In this context, And in preparation for this important event, Algeria continues its efforts to promote national unity among the Palestinian brothers in light of the initiative launched by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, in line with the efforts of many brotherly Arab states in this regard. From this rostrum, I reaffirm that addressing the question of Palestine remains the key to restoring security and stability in the Middle East region by stressing the right of the brotherly Palestinian people to establish their independent state on the borders of the 4th of June 1967 with Jerusalem as its capital, and ending the occupation of the Syrian Golan in accordance with the relevant United Nations resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. In this regard, Algeria affirms its support for the request made by the State of Palestine for full membership of the United Nations. We look forward to receiving it soon as the 194th member state of the United Nations. With the same determination, Algeria reaffirms its support for the right of the brotherly people of Western Sahara to end the occupation of its territory and to exercise their inalienable right that is not subject to the statute of limitation. It is their right to self-determination and independence. It calls upon the United Nations to redouble its efforts through the Secretary General's personal envoy for Western Sahara, Mr. Stéphane de Mistura, with a view to enabling the parties to the conflict, namely the two states members of the African Union, the Kingdom of Morocco and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, to enable those two states to resume direct negotiations with a view to reaching a mutually acceptable political solution within the framework of international legitimacy. Mr. President, based on its principal positions and its adherence to the principles of non-alignment, as well as its history and its rich experience in international mediation, Algeria stresses the need to overcome the logic of crisis management by the international community in order to focus more instead on the search for solutions. Whether it comes to cross-border threats or local conflicts, Algeria believes that only by addressing their root causes can the vicious circle of these crises be sustainably broken. In this context, and in view of its leadership of the international mediation process and the chairmanship of the Commission for the follow-up of the implementation of the Algiers Peace and National Reconciliation Agreement in the Republic of Mali, that is the result of the Algiers path, my country calls upon the international community to support the Malian parties with a view to accelerating the implementation of all their commitments under the delicate transitional period that this fraternal country is undergoing. In our neighboring Libya, we reaffirm the need to address the essence of the crisis by ending all forms of foreign intervention in the affairs of that fraternal country. We stress the need to accompany the Libyan parties towards reaching the necessary agreements to advance the goals of national reconciliation and holding free and fair elections that meet the aspirations of the Libyan people to build a democratic and modern state. At the regional level, the Sahel-Sahara region continues to be vulnerable to the challenges posed by the proliferation of terrorist threats, as well as cross-border crime against the backdrop of the expansion of institutional instability, the aggravation of development problems, and the effects of climate change. Faced with these crisis situations, and given its responsibility as coordinator of the African Union's efforts to combat terrorism and violent extremism, as well as its policy of good neighborliness and solidarity, Algeria intends to intensify its effort in coordination with the concerned states to give new dynamics to the mechanisms of joint action in the regional neighborhood to ensure joint and effective responses that meet the challenges posed by the threat of terrorism to the peoples of the region. Algeria, together with its neighboring countries, is also working to promote economic integration and integrated development and sustainable development in a space of shared prosperity that will enable the achievement of the goals of sustainable development and the strengthening of peace and security in the region. In this regard, I would like to stress that Algeria, which is proud of its African membership, remains an active party in the project of integration, prosperity, and political and economic independence of the African continent. We do this by getting rid of the consequences of external interference and turning towards the development of African solutions to African problems. We therefore call on the international community to support the positive dynamic of the African continent by fulfilling its commitments and supporting the 2063 Development Agenda, which reflects a common vision for the future of the African continent. It also encourages the establishment of balanced partnerships that respect the sovereign decisions taken by the countries of the African Union within the countries of the African continent within the African Union. We also firmly believe that recent developments have proven beyond any doubt that our African continent, the cradle of humanity, is far removed from the stereotyped image promoted. Hence, Africa is capable of presenting a new model of human civilization, a model that places the human being and his environment at the heart of their concerns. It also paves the way for establishing friendly relations between states on the basis of justice and equality. Mr. President, in the midst of these developments and in recognition of the unprecedented challenges at the international and regional levels, Algeria submitted its candidature for non-permanent membership of the Security Council for the period 2024-2025. This candidature was endorsed by the African Union, the League of Arab States, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Algeria, which looks forward to the support of the member states during the elections to be held in June 2023, is committed to upholding the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. It will also work jointly with other members of the Security Council to make international efforts to prevent and resolve conflicts through peaceful means more effective. This is in addition to supporting the role of regional organizations, as well as promoting the prominent participation of women and young people in the resolution of crises, as well as ensuring necessary protection is provided to all vulnerable groups. Mr. President, there is no doubt that the international community stands at a critical juncture today, as it needs to take bold decisions to maintain its collective security and to look forward to a promising future for all humanity. In this context, Algeria calls for the need to avoid the mistakes of the past and their consequences. We call for the consolidation of all our efforts to ensure the success of the reform process towards the establishment of a world order based on equality, sovereign equality, equity, mutual interests, and constructive cooperation. Now, more than ever, we need to work together and to be guided by the principle of our common fate to avoid sliding into dangerous paths that threaten the return of the darkest chapters of contemporary human history. I thank you for listening. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad of Algeria.
We were watching live the statements of Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad of Algeria. The top of